Prynawn da, croeso. Welcome to the Planning, Regulatory and Licensing meeting, Wednesday, 13th of November. Please note that today's meeting may be recorded. This recording will be broadcast on the authority's website and may be used for training purposes by the Democratic Services Department. All attendees will be in full view of the camera, and by attending, you are consenting to being filmed and the possible use of those images and sound recordings being used as outlined. Agenda. First, have we any apologies for absence? Item 2, declarations of interest. Members are reminded of their personal prejudicial Members are reminded of their personal responsibility to declare any personal and prejudicial interest in respect of matters contained in this agenda in accordance with the provisions of Local Government and the Finance Act 1992 relating to the Council Tax, Local Government Act 2000, the Council's Constitution and Members' Code of Conduct. Members are reminded that they must identify the item number and subject matter and the interest relates to and signify the nature of their personal interest, and where members withdraw from the meeting as a consequence of the disclosure of a prejudicial interest, they must notify the chair when they leave. Are we any declarations of interest? No? Okay. As I have mentioned earlier, I am going to change around the items on the agenda tonight, and we'll first go to item number 9, review of Statement of Licensing Principles 2025-2028 and the Gambling Act 2005 to consider a report of the Deputy Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. I'm here tonight to present this report. Normally I would have Joe Baber or somebody from the licensing section to do that. It's Joe's report, but they're all on a training week somewhere in the UK, all of them. So I've been asked to present the report today. It's a very straightforward report. As you can see, it's very short. Licensing function for gambling came to the council in 2005. We got liquor licensing in 2003 to start off. That came from the Magistrates Court to us. 2005, gambling followed. And it's always been the case that initially it was every 5 years we had to review our gambling policy and agree a new policy every 5 years. That's been shortened to every 3 years. And you'll see that the last policy approved by the council was back in 2022. So that 3-year period comes to an end in January 2025. So process is that we usually look at the Gambling Commission guidance. They set out recommended changes to policies, because I think a lot of these policies will be the same. And then we try and incorporate those changes into our policy, and we do a report to this committee and then to full council. You'll see from paragraph 3.3, says that there are a number of ongoing consultations currently being undertaken by the Gambling Commission. So they haven't changed their guidance. Their guidance is the same as it was back in 2022. So therefore, we got nothing to add to this policy over and above what's already in the policy from 3 years ago. So the recommendations are simply this, that the policy that's attached to this report as Appendix 1 be agreed as the policy going forward from January 2025. And then that policy is put to full council in December for it to take effect on the 31st of January 2025. Now, the reason we put it to full council in December is, number one, it is a function of full council to approve the final version of the policy. But also, I'm not sure when full council is in December, but once, I'm assuming that will be approved in full council. We then have to publicise that policy for 1 month from December. That is publicised in the press and in the library and in the Civic Centre and other places. And then once that month is gone, then it's kind of laminated, and that becomes our policy for the next 3 years. Now, as I've said, there are a number of consultations taking place by the Gambling Commission. If they then produce a new guidance document, say, I don't know, maybe in next summer, then we can bring it back before then to have a look at what they recommended. All it says is you must every 3 years, at least every 3 years, review it. But if we want to review it next month or the month after, we can do that. So as I said, the recommendations are straightforward: to approve the policy attached, and to have the matter put before full council in December. Chair, that's all I think I need to say at this point. Oh, sorry, yeah, there is one matter which I think you need to look at, and that's at page 20 in the policy. That is a statement which says no casinos. So it's a very short paragraph. It says no casinos resolution. There are currently no casinos operating within the borough. A resolution was passed not to issue casino licenses, and that is replicated in this particular policy, and that is something that you have to look at every 3 years. Now, there is no casino. I don't think we've ever had an application for a casino. The officers would be able to tell you that, but it's never crossed my desk. I suppose if we did have a request for a casino, and we can always bring it back to see whether or not you want to look at amending that part of the policy. But that policy is a specific part that needs to be formally approved in full council in December. So that's what I want to say at this point.
Do we have any questions? Councillor Clive Jones.
Just to make sure, Chair, particularly in relation to the casino part of it, because that's quite an important part of the report, we don't have to make a decision or reaffirm the decision at tonight's council meeting.
No.
That's for the full council to adhere to, is that right?
It is for full council to approve the final policy, but obviously we'd be asking full council to approve what this committee thinks is appropriate. Now, we've never, every single policy that we've put up, so that's at least 5 or 6 of these since this came in, they've all contained the no casino resolution. So we've never, as far as I'm aware, we've never had an application. And my view is that if somebody did apply for a casino and they said that they wanted us to reconsider that, then we would consider it and we put it back to you and say, look, I mean, this has been the policy of the council for the last 19 years. Do you want it to continue? Maybe something you want. But currently, this has always been the case in these policies that there's no casino.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I'll go on to comments. Any comments? No comments? I'll ask somebody to move the report, please. Moved. Second? Second. We'll put it in the vote. Are we voting, Martha? Okay.
The two recommendations, Chair.
The two recommendations are the draft settlement of licensing policy 2025-2028 attached to Appendix A be agreed as the revised policy. The statement of licensing policy 2025-2028 to be put to full council for approval and adopted from 31st of January 2025 be approved. Put it to vote.
Chair, I haven't voted. I do apologise for coming late, so I didn't.
It's Councillor Clive Jones and Councillor Ernie Goldsworthy.
You're in the wrong seat. The wrong seat down. Wrong seat? Yeah. Yeah. No. Are you in the right place? You're in the right place. I would have been Isaac's seat.
Musical chairs.
No.
Okay.
still technically granted it.
That's it, they've all
And that's been
carried.
carried. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
All right. Right. So we'll go back to the items on the agenda. And we have an open session information report on item 3, appeal decision P23/0288.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm just going to provide a brief summary of the report, given the consequences of the decision. As you can see there, we've attached the inspector's report on the appeal. So I just want to summarise some of the sort of key findings and sort of what it means for the council moving forward. I think there's an overarching theme throughout the inspector's report there that there was no evidence submitted as part of the statement of case to address any of the issues that were put forward as reasons for refusal. I think he highlights no evidence relating to the potential over-concentration of HMOs, no evidence to support the position regarding ASB, and no evidence that the change of use would result in a significant additional amount of occupiers within the property. I think the inspector also uses quite a handy phrase to sort of clarify what we can consider in terms of planning committee and plan applications. I think he says that we are concerned with the use of land rather than the user itself. And again, taking all things into consideration from the inspector there, it was deemed in his conclusion that the local planning authority acted unreasonably in refusing this application against officer recommendation, and full costs were awarded to the appellant.
No, it's for information.
Yeah, and as I said, there'll be no questions because it was an information report.
Okay. All right, now it is. I was going to ask a question before you started. It's normal practice for these information reports, ever since I've been a member of this planning committee, to be just that, information reports. It's on the agenda for this evening. I wondered why has there been the discussion that in future all these will be automatically reported to the planning committee, because as it's been now in the open session, I would suggest, Chair, that we are entitled to ask a question and to make a comment if necessary. It's not in the information part of it.
But it does. Let's have a look. It does quite clearly say, Councillor Jones, that it is a for information report in relation to the appeal decision. It's just been taken out of order. I think the reason it's been taken out of order because of the importance of it. And no,
At all. But why, if it's an information report, and the same with other meetings, particularly council, if it's information report, we cannot normally ask questions. Somebody somewhere has decided this must be on the agenda tonight. So you cannot say that we're not entitled to ask a question or to pass a comment. It's there in black and white.
it is.
It's in the open session.
But it does say that it's for information.
I know.
Councillor Jones.
But
and we all know that the Constitution doesn't allow questions to be asked in relation to a full information report.
well, it should not be here then. It should not be part. It says in black and white, it's in the open session. And if it's in an open session, we're entitled to ask a question and to make a comment. That is quite clear.
Mm. I mean, the Constitution's clear. I'm quite happy for you all to let me know whether you'd like to ask questions in relation to this as a committee as a whole. But I mean, there is no decision to be made in relation to it. I mean, I'm just wondering whether it's better if it's left till the end and you can have a discussion with the planning officers. No, you don't want that, Councillor Jones.
Because this information contained in this report has a direct bearing on one of the cases coming later on, or it could have a direct bearing on a case later on tonight.
Well,
I think
Well,
maybe we should be allowed to ask questions.
I think we've got to be very clear that every planning application is on its own merits anyway.
Yes, but some of the objections made by residents from that area are exactly the same as objections in this report, and residents, I think, need to understand, and committee members as well, to be honest, that what the inspector won't take as evidence and what he thinks of our objections and our comments, because some of them really, one of the things I was going to say tonight, I don't really know why we've got a planning committee, to be honest. You know, we made a decision, gets sent to PEDU, they make a decision against what we said, and well, why we know as councillors our local areas, you know, that's in my opinion.
Okay.
Chair, this is highly unusual to have an information report in the open session. So somebody somewhere decided that for this evening's agenda, this is such an important item to be taken out of information part where you can't ask questions, to be put on here tonight before the rest of the agenda. So my first question is, why was that done? Why is it in the open session? Somebody must know.
Yeah.
Yeah, from my perspective, it wasn't necessarily the issue of bringing it into open session. It was just that we wanted to present the report verbally, just to clarify some of the issues from the inspector's report.
And I understand that. But once it's been taken out of the information report, we as elected members are entitled to ask a question and to make a comment. So I've asked the question. Clearly nobody on the top tier there doesn't know why it's in the open session. But I have a comment to make, because I think it's unfair that whoever's the planning head can reiterate what's in there and we can't take part at all.
I think that all that can actually be done, Councillor Jones, is I think you can make comment in relation to the report. I'd be prepared for that to happen. In relation to questions on the report, the decision has already been made. I mean, the officers put a recommendation before you in whichever month it was, several months ago. There was an appeal made against that decision, and the decision has now been made by the planning inspectorate as to whether or not to grant permission. So I think there has probably been an error. It says open session. It probably should have said for information at the top. Right. That is a problem we obviously have to deal with now. My view is it should have said information at the top for that section. I fully accept what you're saying, that it's been put down as an open session. I think I don't see much point in there being questions, but I do see point in there you making your comments.
Right.
So
We will allow comments.
Okay, we will allow comments.
Right. My comment is in relation to the cost decision, which is on page 10, and it says under there, the application for a full COP award cost is allowed in the terms set below. Section 12, Annex A, award of costs of the Development Management Manual. I'm sure everybody's looking at that daily, whatever it is, advises that irrespective of the outcome of the appeal, costs may only be awarded against a party who has behaved unreasonably. My comment is, as far as this planning committee is concerned, my view is that we didn't behave unreasonably. We had a site meeting for those who turned up there, the site meeting, and we had a quorum to see the circumstances and situation. The public could attend that meeting, not take part, and then we came back and we had quite a debate on this, and the reasons why we were refusing. So I don't accept that at all, that we have behaved unreasonably. It's a throwaway statement that the planning inspectors obviously can use any time without question.
What I'm going to suggest then, Councillor Jones, and I fully take on board what you've said in relation to the acting unreasonably bit, I will ask Craig that perhaps the three of us can have a discussion outside this meeting.
Yeah, I mean, surely he's got to give all the reasons why he believes, because, you know, he is saying the council have to consider costs, and I don't believe for 1 second that we behaved unreasonably.
Can we take this outside of the meeting, Chair, and Craig can arrange a meeting for the three of us to move it forward?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, that's what we'll do then. So as it was only an information report, it doesn't need seconded. So we'll move on to, oh, sorry.
Could I just ask, Chair, I do apologise, that if for any meeting that is organised that I be invited, because I was the one that did the report to them, please.
That's fine.
Thank you,
Just
sir.
the four of us then.
Okay, thank you. As I stated, as it was for information report, it doesn't need moving. So we'll go on to item number 4, P/24/0140, Kevin Easter Flats, Pontycapel Road, Kevin Coyne, Merthyr, for David to take.
Thank you, Chair. Okay, so this application relates to a site that currently accommodates 2 blocks of flats known as Kevin Isav, which are presently unoccupied and is in a state of disrepair. The site is in a predominantly residential area, largely surrounded by housing, with the open countryside to the south of the site. Full planning permission is sought for the demolition of the existing flats and the construction of 2 new buildings to accommodate a total of 40 residential units, which would comprise of 25 one-bedroom flats and 15 two-bedroom flats. The proposed buildings would be of a modern design that vary in height between 3 to 5 floors, which responds to the significant change in levels across the site. The proposed buildings would generally have a smaller footprint than the existing building that's there now, which provides additional space then for amenity use and ecological enhancements. They would also be set back further from the adjacent highways, which enables additional off-street parking to also be provided. And the landscaping scheme would incorporate a central communal amenity space that connects the pedestrian routes linking the site to Pontycapel Road to the north and Wern Road to the south. As a result of the consultation exercise, there were no objections raised by either the internal or external consultees. And as a result of the publicity exercise, it's acknowledged that there were no representations received that otherwise highlighted any particular concerns with the proposed development. In regards to the merits of the proposal, it's noted that the principle of the development is acceptable and that the residential use of the site is effectively already established. The development would provide a total of 40 affordable residential units, which would not significantly increase the existing 34 flats that are presently at the site. The overall modern design of the development would integrate well with the surrounding properties, and particular care has been given to ensure that the scale and mass of the building minimises any impact on the neighbouring properties when compared to what is currently present. The development, together with the landscaping scheme, would significantly improve the quality of the site and would generally enhance the overall character and appearance of the surrounding area, contributing to that sense of place. It's acknowledged that there would remain some impact on the neighbouring properties in terms of overlooking, resulting from elevated windows and balconies, but this would not lead to any significant change or greater impact to that which already exists. The siting and design of the building, which has, as I say, has a smaller footprint, is set back further from the boundaries, which helps to further reduce any sort of overbearing impacts that you might have. In terms of ecology, the most notable impact would be on bats. Lesser horseshoe bats were found in one of the parts of the building, As such, the development would be subject to a licence from Natural Resources Wales, and as part of the mitigation proposal, a bat roost structure would be constructed within the site, together with other mitigation measures to compensate for any impact on protected species. A transport assessment has been carried out which demonstrates the proposal would result in a negligible impact on the highway network. Additionally, the development would increase the level of off-street parking provision from 12 spaces to 30 spaces overall, which in essence is a betterment of the current arrangement. Accordingly, it's recommended in the report that the application be granted permission, subject to the conditions set out on page 25 to 30. So just to go through some of the slides. So before you, as it stands now, that red outline defines the extent of the application site. So it includes where the main buildings are, and then an area of land to the south, which is like effectively a hard standing area at present. So this is just an aerial view, so you can see the site is at the moment is quite developed. You've got quite a large chunk of the flats up to the front, and then there's obviously a large sort of building at the top, and then there's a row of garages then to the one side. I've got some photos that will give a better impression of that. So this is the proposed development, the layout. As you can see, you've got two sort of blocks. Block A and Block B. At the centre then you've got a sort of a landscaped communal space. There's a network of paths, and due to the topography it's quite, there's a mixture of ramps and steps there to provide accessible access. The area to the south then is the hard standing area, which provides additional parking. There's also a row of parking along the top of the site as well. Next slides. So this come up. So this gives you an impression of the difference in scale and mass between what was there already and what's being proposed now. So the blue outlines effectively are what is there now. So you can see in a lot of areas, you know, the development is brought in from the sides of the boundaries of the site. And you can see on the bottom plan there the blue outline, so you can see that the footprint of this development is considerably smaller than what's there at present. So the next slide gives an impression of the development as you would see it from Pontycapel Road. So as you can see, you've got the parking area to the front, and the development at this part will appear 3-storey. It's fairly similar to what's there at the moment, and because the building is set back, it sort of makes that lane a little bit more open, because at the moment it's quite enclosed. The southern end of the site, the development is obviously much larger because of the change in levels. They are essentially 5 floors at this point, but as you'll note, at the top floor, the 5th floor, they're recessed from the sides and the front of the site to kind of reduce that sense of scale and mass when you're sort of within the street itself. Also, the open space at the centre also helps to break up the overall mass of the development, because at the moment the flats kind of extend across that whole frontage. So this gives you an impression of how the sort of the network of paths, and you can see there's quite some levels to negotiate. There'll be a fair bit of landscaping and ecological enhancements introduced, which will help make the area a lot more attractive. And then the following slide gives an impression of what it would look like from Pontycapel Road looking down, so you can see and appreciate a little bit the change in levels as well. And you'll note that the main entrances into the flats are from that central court, so it sort of provides a kind of like a hub of activity. And to give you some contrast to what it's like at the moment, as you can see, where we had the 2 blocks, at the moment it's a one continuous block. It's of a fairly similar scale and height, and it's not necessarily a very particularly attractive frontage with all the garages at the ground level as well. And the photo at the bottom there, you can sort of again see sort of the change in levels, and you'll note that because of that there are sort of like bridged walkways between the blocks as well. From Pontycapel Road, this is kind of what is there at the moment. So you've got the main sort of block at the top, which again is hard on to the highway. Again, not a particularly attractive outlook. And at the ground level, it's a lot of dead frontages. And then further along, as I mentioned, there are a number of private garages, which I think are, they're not part of this development. Okay. I think that's everything, Chair. Christian?
I now go to questions. Councillor Clive Tovey.
Are they going to make Pontycapel Road slightly wider than it is at the moment, or will it remain the same? It is a bit narrow, really.
Well, the carriageway itself, I think, will pretty much remain the same. If I go back to the slide. But obviously, at the moment, because the building is hard on the edge of the footpath, it does give that sense of much more enclosed environment. But what there will be is a row of parking spaces off the back of the pavement. So that will set the development a bit further back, but also as you'll see, there we go. So as you can see, at the moment it goes hard up onto the boundary, but you'll have the row of parking, which will set the development back. But also there's the buildings themselves have been set back further as well. So you've got an area of landscaping and the sort of the pedestrian links then to the building. So whilst the road itself will appear the same, the development, the whole street will feel a lot more open.
Oh, right.
And that's probably a betterment then to the residents as well, insofar as that the development being further back, the shadows that it would cast, they might find, is less dominating for them as well.
No, that's okay, thanks.
Councillor Scott Thomas.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, on page 15, third paragraph down, it highlights there that there's going to be a total of 4 disabled parking spaces. With that being said, will any of the flats in the proposed property be accessible or adapted based on the number of people waiting for such a property and the current small number of stock that we actually have?
Yeah, so the 4 disabled spaces, you've got 1 at the top of the site and then 3 at the bottom of the site. And from both sides, so from the top, there's a ramped route that comes down and zigzags back to the main entrance, and there's a similar one from the bottom of the site. So in terms of the flats, those that are on the ground floor will obviously be accessible, and there's a good link then from those parking areas to that. Whether that meets any sort of the actual demand for disabled parking, disabled accommodation, I don't know if that. I mean, there's always a need for more, I suppose. So, but it does provide some on this site at least, yeah.
Gives me a bit of a good feeling about that. So fine. Thank you.
Councillor Clive Jones.
Thank you, Chair. I've got 3 questions. On the copy of the plan we got in front of us, there are 30 spaces. So I presume, looking from that, 10 of them are on Pontycapel Road and the other 20 behind, or is it the other way around?
Yeah, so the main parking spaces, you've got the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 spaces across the top.
Right.
And then the remaining 20 then are on the bottom there.
Right. Okay. This is 3 stories, both blocks. Are there lifts in each one?
I'd have to check the floor plans to double check if there is a lift. I think there is a central lift. Yeah.
Ah, right. Your eyesight is better than mine. So So that answers there are lifts. And the third question is, the current block of flats have been empty for a few years. So obviously accommodation to let has been taken out. It's 40 years. How long will it take to build, and when will these flats become available for letting?
I don't have a timescale on that I'm aware of how long it would take to build. In terms of commencing on site, in the first instance, they'll have to get a BAT license. So there's a process they'll have to go through before they can start any demolition works. And there are conditions linked to that to ensure that the bat roost feature is put in place beforehand. So I imagine that will take some time before they can start the demolition works. But as to the timescales to deliver it, it's not something I'm aware of.
So it's already been identified that a bat's roosted there because it's empty. There's a particular procedure they've got to go through. And that sometimes takes quite some time. So inevitably that's going to affect the whole time scale as to when these will be ready. Is it reasonable to say it will be a year and a half at least before these flats are available for letting?
Yeah, I'm just going to Clive. So we couldn't really comment on sort of final delivery dates, but discussions have been underway with the RSL to sort of what happens next now in terms of next steps. And I think all the information they need is ready to go to apply for the BAT licence. They would hope to have that either just before the end or very early in the new year, as there is grant funding associated with this that they need to spend by 31st of March in terms of demolition. So it's not something that will drag on. Sort of work will, even if it's not physical works on site, the work is ongoing at the moment to sort of get the site ready to go.
And then the blocks, after they've dealt with the BAT situation, will have the blocks then, the first thing is to demolish the both blocks.
Yeah, so once they get their BAT license, the first step will be to clear the site, remove the structures that are there, and then prep the site ready then for the new development. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Clive Toby.
Out of academic interest, bats hibernate in the winter, don't they? So when will you be allowed to knock the buildings down? Because you couldn't take hibernating bats, could you, really? Considering they carry rabies as well, you wouldn't want to catch them.
Well, as I say, they'll have to get a license from NRW, so that'll set out when they can do the works and any sort of precautionary measures. You can sometimes demolish buildings, but there'll be steps that you have to do. Like, for instance, you might have to do some demolition by hand to remove barge boards and stuff, or you'd have to do sort of inspections, like periscope inspections beforehand. Yeah, and as I mentioned earlier, there's a requirement for them to put a new bat roost structure. Well, there's a couple of things. There's a structure itself which will remain in place at the end of it, but there's also temporary bat structures which are mounted on poles, so that if there are bats active in the area, that or while development is going ahead, that they can basically utilise those things, those roosts, in the future.
So Dickley. Yeah, Councillor John Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. My question relates to the parking spaces. We got 30 there. Would they be permits for the flats themselves? Because this area can be heavily congested with the school and with the playing fields down to the side. Would they be permits specifically for those flats, or would anybody be able to park there?
Well, I would imagine, because I think it's all in the control of the applicant, it'd be up to them how they want to manage it, I would have thought. Because I don't think the parking spaces are to be adopted. Yeah, so it'd be MVH that will manage the parking areas, yeah, because it's effectively private land.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Chair.
Comments? Councillor Clive Toby.
Well, I'd like to propose it. The building's been an eyesore now for the past 2 years. Everyone was moved out 2 years ago. We were expecting things to have happened sooner, really. So I think the quicker it gets going, the better, to be honest. Thanks. So I'd like to propose the motion. Thanks.
I'll second the motion.
We'll vote on that then. And that's carried. Thank you. We now go on to item number 5, P/24/0201, 2 Llewellyn Street, Merthyr Tydfil, to reconsider a report of the Chief Executive.
Thank you, Chair. This application relates to a mid-terraced property that fronts onto Llewellyn Street. Full planning permission is sought to change the use of the property from a 2-bedroom dwelling to a house of multiple occupation to accommodate 4 people. The development would involve some minor works to the rear elevation to block up a window and install patio doors, and minor internal works would be required to create additional bedrooms at the first floor level and to provide an open plan arrangement on the ground floor. No objections were raised as a result of the consultation exercise. However, 39 objections were received following the publicity exercise. A summary of the concerns are highlighted in the report, which includes the ability of the property to be adapted as a HMO, potential risks to vulnerable persons in the area, fire risks, on-site parking, and antisocial behaviour. On-street parking and antisocial behaviour. In regards to the planning considerations, the principle of the development is deemed to be acceptable, and although the residential nature of the property would change, it would remain compatible with the surrounding residential properties. The property is also the property can also be adequately converted to accommodate 4 bedrooms, and it's considered to be suitably located in a sustainable location. The development would involve minor works to the rear elevation and the interior of the property. As such, it's not considered that this would have an adverse impact on the character and appearance of the area, and the highway engineers have not raised any highway safety concerns with the development, and the parking requirements for the HMO would not differ to that of the existing use as a dwelling. Therefore, the proposed use of the property would not give rise to any significant change in circumstances. Accordingly, it is recommended that the application be granted planning permission, subject to the conditions set out on pages 37 and 38 of the report. So just to go through some of the slides, the red outline sets out the extent of that property. And as you can see, the context, it's within a residential area, fronts onto the main highway, and there's lane access then around the property as well. So at the at the ground floor level, you can see on the left is existing arrangement, and on the right is the proposal. So essentially, the intention is to create an open plan living kitchen area and to convert the kitchen that's located at the back of the site into essentially a bathroom and a shower room. At the first floor level, again, existing on the left, proposed on the right. What you'll note is that the existing bathroom would be effectively converted into a bedroom, and then the master bedroom at the bottom there would be split into 2 separate bedrooms to provide the 4 individual bedrooms. The illustrations on the left show the existing rear aspect of the building. So you'll note on the right shows the proposal. So you'll note there's a patio door in place of a window, and the back door, which is off the existing kitchen, would be blocked up. So fairly minor change there. The photo gives an impression of the site within the street from the garages opposite. And this photo is taken a bit further down the road just to kind of show the context of the street from a different perspective. As I say, the application is recommended for approval. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, as the change in the constitution now allows questions from the public. We haven't any objectors booked in to speak, so we'll now have Hannah Dugard speaking on behalf of the agent to address council.
Yeah, she's online.
Yeah, Hannah, can you hear us?
Yes.
Would you 5 minutes?
Yep. 5 minutes. We sort of.
Perfect. Dear councillors, thank you for taking the time to review our application today. We are aware that this application hasn't been well received by the neighbours, but I'd like to let you know that this change of use application isn't for your stereotypical HMO that tends to be perceived negatively. You can see that we've submitted an application to convert a 3-bed property to a 4-bed property, as we're looking to maximise the space without overdeveloping the plot. We have followed the planning guidelines and will also be carrying out the refurbishment to a high spec and standard like we have done for all of our properties. For your awareness, we are working with Clear Springs, who are one of the largest providers of housing to the Home Office and have been a provider of this since the year 2000. Our part is to provide them with homes to assist them in meeting their government targets of housing asylum seekers. The service users of these properties aren't here to be a nuisance. They are here to embed into the community, and once they get their refugee status, they then move into family homes. We have a portfolio of successful properties and we are very professional and respectful in what we do, and we already have tenants in our buy-to-lets who have obtained their refugee status and are now working in our communities, and their kids have joined local schools. We understand the importance of location for our properties, as the service users don't have cars, so they need to be close to public transport and local amenities, of which 2 Llewellyn Street is. I'd like to draw your attention to the sizes of the rooms we've designed, with the smallest being 7.38 metres squared and the rest being between 8.13 and 10.88 metres squares. So please note, despite there being double beds in each of the bedrooms on the plans, these rooms will be for single adults, of which the minimum room size requirement is 6.51 metres squared, which we have exceeded. The property also benefits from a large kitchen and living space, which far exceeds the space standards outlined in the licensing standards. The minimum size for a kitchen with no separate lounge for 4 persons is 14.86 metres squared, and ours is measuring 27.63 metres squared, which is almost double the size requirement. I'd also like to point out that we've accounted for 2 bathrooms instead of the 1 bathroom required as per policy for 4 persons. Having read through the responses received from the statutory consultees, none have objected to our proposal. In fact, it was positive to read that the Highway Authority do not consider the increase in bedrooms to have a detrimental effect on the existing highway network, and confirmed that pedestrians are able to easily access the property via the local public transport network, as there are 2 bus stops within approximately 250 metres of the site. I can see that the response from the planning policy and implementation have confirmed that the development meets replacement LDP policies, and advised to further review policy SW11, which, as I understand it, requires new developments to, among other things, be appropriate to its local context in terms of scale, height, layout, density, etc., not result in an unacceptable impact on the local amenity, loss of light or privacy or visual impact, allow access for the widest range of people possible, and demonstrate that any traffic movements will not have an unacceptable impact on the local amenity, and provide adequate facilities and space for waste collections and recycling. As you know, Highways have confirmed that we won't have an unacceptable impact on the local amenity, and our minor changes to the development is appropriate to its local context. And further, we'll have a management plan for the property, which includes waste being collected regularly as well as monthly inspections. The biggest concern for HMOs is always around the level of activity, noise and antisocial behaviour, and I want to confirm that there's a housing officer dedicated to the service users, and we will be sharing their contact details along with our own with the neighbouring properties. So should there ever be an issue, no matter what day or time it is, you have our word that it will be dealt with swiftly. But to reiterate, we don't expect there to be any issues. This is for peace of mind. As a local investor, I do understand the need to care for the neighbours of our properties, and I give assurance that with our management plan in place, the neighbours of 2 Llewellyn Street won't be impacted by 4 adults living at the property over and above what they would have if we were operating the property as a buy-to-let. So to conclude, I am confident we've submitted a scheme that is in line with the policies, and I welcome any questions.
Questions from committee members to be asked for clarity only at this time. Councillor Clive-Jones.
It was stated there that, and I certainly, as one of the local board members, wasn't aware, it doesn't say in the report, that and perhaps you'll confirm it again, that the 4 occupants, presume they'll all be single, will be of a refugee status. And if that is the case, I presume you won't be determining who the tenants are. It'll be the Home Office. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right. The other thing is you've stipulated the size of the rooms there. This is a 2-bedroom property, Chair, which has been converted into 4 bedrooms, so you've doubled the size. One of the rooms that's been converted is the bathroom upstairs. I understand the size of that is not changing. On the plan there, it states the bathroom size is 7.3 squared. The minimum that any bedroom size can be from the regulations, which are operated by the Environmental Health Department, is 6.5. That, so it's just above the minimum. That is small, in my opinion. Would you accept that in that particular bedroom, the most you could put in there is a single bed, because you'd have a bit of difficulty putting any other furniture in there?
Sorry, was that a question for me?
Yes.
Sorry. It is the smaller size bedroom, but that's because we're using the existing property, and we've also wanted to utilise the property having 2 bathroom spaces for the 4 occupants. Otherwise, we'd go into the rounds of further extending, and we didn't want to overdevelop the plot. I think you can fit a small double in that bedroom, but you are correct, you wouldn't be able to fit a whole load of furniture in there. But we do need to be mindful that the service users who do come and are staying in these properties, they don't come with much belongings. This is for them to be able to settle into the community before moving into a suitable family home.
And Chair, this is another question for the developer. You are talking about single individuals. Is that the case? They won't be, for example, a couple or a partner being able to stay there. And if that ever happened, and you were advised, you would stop that?
Yeah, that wouldn't be allowed. It's for single adults per room only.
I've got other questions. I'm able to ask them now, or...
Thank you, Chair. Possibly two quick questions from me. You highlighted in your presentation in respect of your policies and protocols. With those, do you have any in place regarding the community impact or the community views at all during the scouting or pre-purchase of a property?
Do you mean, do we consult with neighbours before putting applications in pre-purchase?
In general, just scouting the location as a whole, because obviously, yeah, you might have obviously direct neighbours one side and the other, but obviously there's a wider community element of it as well. And obviously, you're not just going to directly impact 1 or 2 people. You're going to impact quite a different array of people with bringing that sort of this kind of property into use.
Yeah, so there are checks that are carried out prior to us even considering an HMO application. So Clear Springs, who the ones I mentioned who are working with the Home Office, they submit checks first to the local police. So they look for antisocial behaviour, how many HMOs they may already have in the area, or how many service users they operate. So there's specific checks that need to be carried out first on whether the local police would even accept this as an HMO before we even consider going any further, and that normally covers the wider range of the area of that property.
Fab. My second question in regards to your presentation as well, you stated in the presentation it's a 3-bedroom property that you'd obviously convert into 4. obviously in our plans here, it's a 2-bedroom property. I'm just curious as to where you found the 3rd bedroom.
Sorry, no, that's my mistake. It's currently a 2-bed property.
Thank you.
Sorry.
Councillor Gareth Lewis.
Thank you, Hannah, for your comments. You mentioned that each bedroom would be single occupancy. However, is there any rules, policy or regulation in place to prevent it being occupied by any bedroom being occupied by a couple?
I believe so, and I believe that goes by licensing from an HMO as well. So if this is licensed for a 4-person HMO, I can only have 4 persons per bedroom. The service users that Clear Springs house in these properties, they don't house couples or families. If they did have couples or family, the contracts we have with them would be looking to them be in a family home, whether that be a flat or a house.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Clive Jones.
Can I clarify the last point, Chair, about the licence? Because I've been in touch with the Environmental Health Department, and for this particular property, they don't require a licence, because guess what? You have to have 5 individuals in a property to have a licence. Yes, well, I'm just clarifying, because she mentioned the word licence, but you don't require a licence to clarify the information, to correct Hannah. There's no licence required.
Okay.
Right. Now then, I've been on your website and you cover quite a arena of services. Just to completely clarify, the name and address of the applicant's road agent is Mr. Craig Davis, Mainty Group Consulting Limited. Has this property been purchased by Mainty Group Consulting Limited?
No, sorry. So Mainty Group are the architects that we instructed. We're currently purchasing the property, Do God Holdings. So we'll be the owners and the landlord of the property. Mainty Group are the architects and the builders that we use too.
Right. So you are representing the owners, is that correct?
Yes. Yes.
Right. So, well, this question will still apply. You've mentioned that there'll be no issues with this occupants. If there are, we'll be able to sort that out straight away. So, having read I presume you'll engage Mainty for other services other than the work that they would do. So what management support and oversight will be carried out for the 4 individuals would be living at 2 Llewellyn Street? Will you have a call system for any, for example, antisocial behaviour issues that may happen, particularly after hours, and they usually happen late on a Friday night or a Saturday? So do you, on the website of Mainty, it refers to a facilities management service. I presume it doesn't actually specify that covers call-outs. So how will you find out if there's a problem? Because you have stated you would deal with them. So if one of the neighbours rings whoever at 1 o'clock in the morning, early hours of a Saturday morning when things usually kick off, is there somebody there who's able to respond straight away?
Yes, so we've got Mainty Group who we work who offer 24/7 support. We've also got our own in-house team where we manage our portfolio of lettings that we already have. So contact details and more than one contact details will be shared with neighbouring properties as well. So if there ever was any issue, as you say, out of hours, early hours, Friday, Saturday, weekends, mornings, they would definitely be able to get hold of someone. Obviously, when we respond to that, depending on the severity of what's happening, we would then call on, in extreme cases, obviously we're talking here police, but we live locally, we'd be able to respond straight away. And we've also got the support of Clear Springs, who are managing the contract as well. They have a housing officer dedicated to the service user. So I'm confident that any issues that will arise, we would be able to act promptly. And in severe cases, if there are issues, we can look to change those tenants out of the property as well by working with Clear Springs.
So, Chair, through you, your company will have, whoever the 4 individuals, sign a tenancy agreement, because they will be, in my view, tenants. I presume that you'll be provided with an income. They'll be paying a rental, or whoever pays it, to you.
Yeah, so our contract is with Clear Springs, and the Clear Springs are the ones who pay the rental income for the property. But we are made aware at all times of who they're called service users, but I agree with you, tenants are at the property, but the contract itself is directly with Clear Springs.
Right. And clearly, this would be permanent accommodation, particularly, in my view, if they are refugee status, they'd be looking for more permanent accommodation. Mm-hmm. So do you accept, because there are residents either side of this property, that there will be a constant transient people living there from day to day, week to week, month to month?
It wouldn't be there wouldn't be as much as a transition because of when they're first placed in the property. It's normally right at the beginning of the refugee status. We're looking to embed them into the community first, find them jobs, get them settled in. It's just as much that we don't want to disrupt them as much as we don't want to disrupt the neighbours either. So we're not looking to have people moving in and out on a monthly basis. We'd be looking to have year contracts of people in place before we move them on to our family homes. They're then in permanent buy-to-lets, where we'd look to have them for a year or longer. So that I understand what you're saying in terms of the nature of it, but we wouldn't be looking to be changing tenants over until they're fully settled. So 6 months at a minimum, we'd be looking to have a tenant in that room.
So that'll be in the contract. They'll have to live there 6 months, but after that, if the condition is suitable, they'll move out of there.
We can move them on because they've got jobs, and then we can move them into a buy-to-let. We will, and then we can look to house the next person.
One, I think, last question. What is the minimum age of any of the occupants?
So I've spoke to Clear Springs about this before. They have to be adults. They do need to be a minimum age of 18. However, when they are housing, we do look to house, for example, we'd be looking to house similar ages. If it's all males or all females, we wouldn't be looking to have like 2 18-year-old girls and 2 40-year-old men as an example. So we do take the age consideration into account when Clear Springs are housing their tenants there.
But there's likely to make, through your chairs, likely to be a mix of individuals. There could be 3 females, 1 male, and the other way about. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Declan Salmon.
Hannah, in your application, in the neighbourhood and community consultation, it asks a question: have you consulted with neighbours or the local community about a proposal? You mark no. Is that still the case? You haven't consulted with anyone in the local area?
No, we haven't. I know it's normally a really sensitive topic for neighbours. So what I normally do is I let them express obviously their opinions and everything first, go through the planning process, and then I go to look to meet them in person, whether it's accepted or rejected, because obviously we're still purchasing the property and we'll be operating it as a buy-to-let, for example. So I'd still be looking to meet the neighbours anyway, but I don't normally engage with neighbouring properties pre any planning applications.
Okay, bearing in mind you said earlier that it's your aim for the occupants or the service users to integrate into the community, use the facilities before being housed permanently. Is this normally the way you act as a company? You go ahead, apply, and don't contact neighbours or have them involved in anything?
I haven't previously, but I do take on feedback that if that would help neighbouring properties or understand the applications put forward, I think, take on board. That's probably something we can look to do in the future.
Okay, thank you, Hannah. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you. We'll now go to local members, and it'll be Councillor Louise Bennett Folks.
Thank you, Chair. Gosh, I've learned some information today that as ward member I wasn't aware of. So that's kind of blown me away at the moment. Okay, so obviously there's been some additional concerns raised within the last 10 minutes, which I wasn't prepared for. But so obviously for those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Louise Bennett Folks, and I'm speaking for the 39 objectors to this application to turn this down. And Hannah, I appreciate your presentation, but I think the voice of the community is key, and it's quite concerning that the direct neighbours haven't been spoken to. So as we know, HMOs often bring an increase in the number of residents per property. Obviously, I can appreciate what Hannah have said in her presentation. So many of the streets in Park Ward, including Llewellyn Street, were designed for single family homes, not high density living. Limited parking already in the area leads to illegal, poorly parked cars, blocked pavements and endangerment of pedestrians. This proposal is right by Cyfarthfa Park Primary School. Is an additional concern now that there is the Home Office have oversight of who's going to be living in this property. So that potentially is a concern for the localised primary school. In addition to the school, they also face issues with traffic and safety of the children to and from school. This particular area was part of the school streets closure trial, which I'm a bit confused wasn't included in any of the reports that have come back from Highways, because it was clear from the school streets trial that this area, high density area, is in desperate need of additional measures to assist with the roads and parking situation. This area is historically an area for families, long-term residents and people who value strong community ties. Converting single family homes into HMOs fundamentally changes that dynamic. With frequent change in residents, it becomes harder to build that sense of community we cherish. Again, Hannah, I appreciate Hannah saying that they will be out of our support, but what we have learned so far with these continuous applications for HMOs is that the community are left out on their own. There has been increased complaints about noise, criminal activity, waste management, and there is no other way of dealing with these apart from the police. Ward members are dealing with complaints from surrounding residents and nowhere to turn. And again, like I say, you've got dedicated property managers, but I believe members have heard that before. I know planning officers will say that it's a matter for the police. However, locally, we've got no police on the streets. We've got serious concerns. Park Ward alone shares one PCSO with other wards. We currently face serious issues with antisocial behaviour, drug dealing, drug taking in open daylight, and the police presence is not there. The PAC priority since I have been elected are these very issues, which are ongoing with no sign of cessation. There's this additional concern that we are now aware of the potential of the use for this property, which needs to be considered. So having HMOs with no official oversight or any accountability are having current ripple effects in our communities, and it does need to stop. I would appreciate what sort of level of monitoring support is in place for those living there. And I just think that it's absolutely shocking that the direct neighbours have not been spoken to. Hearing this information now at this stage is totally unacceptable for the small area in which this is planned for. Again, I know some of the issues raised may not be material planning consideration. However, something needs to change. We haven't got all the facts. The community hasn't been fully consulted. I urge members here today to just don't go ahead with the recommendation. On behalf of the 39, that's a strong voice of a very small community, a small area, and do not agree to this application. Thank you, Chair.
Have we any questions from committee members? No? Comments? Oh, it was a question.
Sorry, Chair. I was so concerned with asking Hannah a question. I had questions on the actual report. So the planners are not going to get away with this one, scot-free. No. It's, if you go to page 35, under the heading Principle of the Development, and many years ago, a previous town clerk of a previous administration said to me, words are very important. So if you look at the first paragraph under the Principle of the Development, the last sentence, whilst the residential nature of the property would change as a house of multiple occupation, it would nonetheless remain a compatible use with the surrounding properties. Well, the author of this report has probably shot herself in the foot, because if you go further down the page, under the heading Character and Visual Impact, and if you go to halfway down that paragraph, it reads, it is appreciated that properties occupied by non-family households have the potential to change the character of the area. So there's your answer. It's without a shadow of doubt, it changes the character of the area. So I don't know why one comment's been put in there in one paragraph and completely given the reverse in the other paragraph. Perhaps one of the planning officers could explain that to me.
Yeah, I think in the sentence under character and visual impact, I think it refers to the change of use could potentially have that sort of impact on an area. But then I think the officer does then go on to clarify that in this case, it cannot be argued that the proposed HMO would lead to an over-concentration that would result in significant harm.
But, yeah, Chair, that comment in itself is a statement. This is the first, I hope it's the last, of any HMOs in the area. But you can't argue with that because there's no other HMOs there in the area. This is the first one. So it's only a statement. There are, at the moment, as far as we know, mind you, and there might be other plans in the pipeline, because what's happened tonight is come out of the blue. There might be other applications in the pipeline that we don't know about. I got another question, page 35, bottom paragraph, second line down, it says there, in regards to the potential intensification of the residential use, it is noted that under the town and country planning, in brackets, use classes, end of brackets, order, it allows the existing property to already be occupied by up to 6 people that form a household. Now, I don't know what it says in that town and country planning use of classes order, but somebody perhaps can clarify with me how the hell you can get 4 people, could be 4 grown-up adults, 4 children in the second bedroom, but that's what it's saying.
Well, in terms of the use class order, it's basically referring to the use class C3, which is for residential properties. So within that, if you are a family, there's no limit on how many people can live together. If you're not effectively related, you can have up to 6 people living together, forming a household without the need for planning permission. So that's essentially falls within the same category as a normal family home, as a C3 use. So in this instance, if this property was converted internally, which wouldn't need planning permission, they could already form 4 bedrooms and allow a family of 4 people to live there without the need for planning permission. The only reason the application has come in is because it's because it's more than 2 people to form a HMO, it falls in the C4 use class. So, but when you're comparing how the property can already be used and how the property is proposed to be used, it's essentially the same, potentially the same number of people. If you were to have more than or up to 6 people as part of a HMO, if it's more than 6, then it's classed as sui generis, so that needs a different type of permission altogether again.
Yeah, I think, sorry, just to sort of clarify, I think what the report isn't saying, the report isn't necessarily saying that 6 people, it would be appropriate to house 6 people in this, but it said that is what is allowed under the permitted development rights. You could have 6 people living as a single household in a dwelling without needing planning permission. So irrespective, before you actually look at the logistics of whether you could fit the people in, I think the report here is just setting the scene that is what could be done under permitted development rights.
But do you accept it's not feasible? Whatever these orders state, it's ludicrous.
I think we're not making
one bedroom, and they were saying the second bedroom can accommodate 4.
I appreciate that, but we're not making a judgment on whether you could fit 6 people in this house. We're assessing the change of use to a 4-bed HMO.
One other question to the planners, and I think the 39 objectors need a specific answer to this tonight. Did you know that as part of the plan that there would be refugees housed here? Were you told and advised at any time? Was that put in writing? Was it by email or was it by a phone call?
We were not told that explicitly, but again, just to sort of go back to a part of the inspector's report that was mentioned earlier, we are here, as planners, we are concerned with the use rather than the user.
So no one in the authority, as far as you know, was aware. Obviously, the organisation that Hannah represents clearly knows that this was planned for refugees. Somebody in the authority must know.
Councillor Jones, I mean, Craig has given you the answer.
Yeah.
The planner has answered what he knows.
So as far as we know, nobody else in the authority would know that refugees would be coming here.
I don't think anyone on the top table can answer that question, Clyde. No. But as Clyde has pointed out, it's not a material planning consideration in any event. So
it's material to us as members of the planning committee, and it's even more material to the 39 objectors and to myself and Councillor Minute-Vaux as the 2 ward members. That's the first we've heard of it tonight.
Councillor Gareth Lewis.
My question is for Hannah. Has any
Gareth is gone.
Oh, apologies.
Yeah.
Apologies. Okay. Planner's answer.
Well, if they can answer it.
Okay. Has any due diligence been carried out on the owner of the property?
The owner of 2 Llewellyn Street.
Sorry, Hannah, you can't.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Again, it hasn't been done in terms of the planning officers themselves, and again, that wouldn't be a material planning consideration.
Okay. Thank you. Can I come back on that? It may be appropriate if members of the committee Google the owner. That's all I've got to say on it.
Any further questions? Councillor Clyde Jones.
Where do I start? Start at the beginning. We've both been running with this for the last 3 months or so, Councillor Minette-Vaux and myself. We've been copied in to most of the objectors. There is real concern from all concerned, those living in the actual either side of the properties in that part of Llewellyn Street, because these are the older type of houses. The rest of Llewellyn Street is a bit higher up. And frankly, it comes as an absolute bombshell tonight.
because it is, what your views are, it's a very sensitive subject. And clearly, this has been kept as close to the chests of those who are purchasing the property and have accepted, they've clearly seen approaches being made to the Home Office for these individuals to be there. In circumstances like this, you know, there needs to be a two-way communication, clearly, between what's proposed and particularly with residents around there. Because in some cases, sometimes, their pertinent questions may be answered to their satisfaction. Let's go back to this. We are converting a 2-bedroom property into 4 bedrooms. You couldn't jam any more bedrooms in there if you tried. On the ground floor, I mean, the bathroom, frankly, is a ridiculous size for a bedroom. If somebody's going to be a permanent occupant there for at least 6 months, and it sounds as if they will be there longer, they'll have one tiny bedroom and one room downstairs where everything has been knocked into one. It's, as I said, it's a mid-terrace properties. The exact words of the case officer, which is something I wrote here previously, it is appreciated that properties occupied by non-family households have the potential to change the character of the area, i.e. damage social cohesion with higher levels of transient residents. They will be moving in and out of there, in my opinion, quite frequently because of the type of individual going there. I just, you know, there's a school literally less than 100 yards away from you. It is unbelievable. And in my view, whatever people feel about it, these houses have multiple occupations, because I've been around a long time. And when I was very young, they weren't called HMOs, they were called lodging houses. And this, in my view, whatever safeguards Hannah's said, it's going to be wonderful, there's going to be no problems there, they'll be there at the drop of a hat. They will be people who are lodging there on a very short-term basis before they are moved to other permanent accommodation. I can tell you now, when I saw the interim emails that came in, I thought this is heading for problems, and we are not surprised that there are 39 objectors there, and their concerns, in my view, have been raised tonight by what we've been told out of the blue. There is no way in a million years I would be voting for approval of this planning application, Chair.
Councillor Declan Salmon.
Thank you, Chair. Gerard, you made the statement earlier that each planning application should be decided on its own merits, and I fully agree that this is the way it should be done. However, given the decision by PEDU to overturn the committee's decision on a previous application for a HMO and the award of costs against the council, I feel that elected members will be under pressure to make a decision on money instead of making the best decision for residents. That's an opinion. It's also very disappointing, following my question to Hannah earlier, that I've learned that there was no neighbour and community consultation. It's not the way to go. Thank you, Chair.
Any further comments? Can I get somebody to move the report? Thank you. Anybody to second it? Thank you. So we'll put this to the vote then.
Thank you.
Okay.
Right, so that's not carried, Chair. So the committee have decided not to follow officer's recommendation. What we'd normally do at this stage is we would adjourn to another room to work out the reasons for refusal. What I was going to ask the committee clerk was, would it be easy if we asked the members of the public to leave, or do we need to leave? Stay. Yeah.
Who's that, Chair?
He's the third one, I think. I'm. Can I go to the toilet?
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so during the adjournment, the members have come up with 2 reasons for refusal. The one is the effect on the character of the area, and the second one is the impact on highway safety. So what will happen now is we'll take a vote on that those are the 2 reasons for refusal, and that the matter be referred back to the next committee, which is due to sit on the 11th of December, when the matter will be considered further. So what you're voting on now is that those are the 2 reasons for refusal: impact on highway safety and the effect on the character of the area, and that the matter comes back on the 11th of December to be considered further. So if someone can move that, second that, and then if you can all vote on it.
I move that, Chair.
It to the vote. Yes, well, that's carried, so it'll come back in December. Okay, so we can now move on to item 6P/24/0209, 13 Argyle Street, Toynrodin, Merthyr Tydfil.
Thank you, Chair. So this application relates to a mid-terrace property in a primarily residential area. Full planning permission is sought to enable the first floor bedroom to be used as a beautician, which would be ancillary to the main residential use of the property. The small business would operate Monday to Friday from 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. There would be only one visitor at the property at any one time, and the business would be operated by the residents themselves. There are no internal alterations to the layout of the property, which would remain primarily residential with the exception of the one room. I'll show a plan in a second on that. There are no objections as a result of the consultation exercise. However, following the publicity exercise, 1 letter of objection was received and a petition containing 8 signatures. The concerns raised are highlighted in the report, which relate to the quiet nature of the street, potential smells and fumes from the property, impact on privacy, parking, and being out of character with the area. In regards to the planning considerations, the proposal is deemed to be small scale in nature and would not result in a significant change in the character of the property or surrounding area. It's noted that the use would be ancillary to the residential use of the property, and a condition would be imposed to ensure this remains the case. It's acknowledged that the petitions would generate some degree of traffic with people coming and going, but this would not be not of a scale that would give rise to any highway safety concerns, nor is it considered that the coming and going of people would generate adverse issue of noise and disturbance. Indeed, this would not likely be any greater than a person you might normally expect when they visit a property from time to time. The proposed development is therefore deemed to be acceptable, and it's recommended that planning permission be granted, subject to the conditions set out on page 46. Just referring to the slides, the red outline is the property, which I believe this property in the street here. The following plan sets out the current layout of the property. As you can see, it remains the same. However, the first floor bedroom would be, as you can see on the right, would be converted in what they've termed a therapy room to be used as part of the beauticians. This is the property in question, is that with the sort of pebble dash finish. And just because obviously highways was raised as a concern there, this is a photo just looking up the streets on the top and down the streets on the top and up the street on the bottom, which just gives you an impression of the sort of current parking arrangement as it stands at the moment. I believe the property also has a parking space to the rear as well. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. as in the item before, we have nobody speaking on behalf of objectors, but we do have Mr. Julian Barzy speaking on behalf of the item. So if I go over to Mr. Barzy, he has 5 minutes to put your case.
Okay. I think I'll be a lot quicker than that. Good evening, everybody, and thanks for allowing me the time to attend the meeting. I'm the owner of the property, and the proposal is for my daughter, who's a qualified beautician. She will be living at the property, and this was just an opportunity from father to daughter to give her a platform for a career. I completely respect and understand the concerns of the residents, as would I if such a thing was proposed where I live. But this would be no different to anybody living at that property. There is going to be one person living there, which is my daughter, and you'll have one customer attending that property each time. It's all by appointment only. There'll be no other members there, so it is one in and one out. If I was to put a family in that property, you could have 2, possibly more cars, which would cause more of a concern. There's parking at the rear, and we are entitled to have parking at the front also. So there would be absolute no disruption to residents in that street. My father-in-law lives 2 doors up, so I'm old enough and wise enough to understand not to upset the in-laws. So I spoke to them first and foremost and explained what I wanted to do, and there's no concern there. In honesty, a lot of people do this without going through what I've done. People do operate from homes without planning, but I wanted to be transparent and wanted to do it the right way. Hence me sort of coming to the committee here this evening. Like I said, it's very, very low key. If we were to operate without us attending here, I don't think it would have been any complaints, because there would be no disruption. There's going to be no antisocial behaviour. There's a young girl starting out with clients attending one at a time. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And as before, members of the committee can ask questions of Mr. Barzy, but for only clarity only. Have we got any questions? Councillor John Thomas.
Yeah, I don't have questions for Mr. Barzy, but I got a few for the planners, if that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, then, John. Okay. Scott?
I suppose my only question to you is, obviously, should this application fall, do you have any alternative provision for your daughter for obviously securing her future in her business?
At this moment in time, am I on here? At this moment in time, no. This is the plan that we sort of pushing on with. If this isn't to go ahead, then obviously I will have to occupy the property, and I can't guarantee, I can't have a criteria for people going into the property that you can only have 1 or 2 cars or whatever. So as I stand, the answer to your question, sorry, is there's no other plan at this moment in time.
Thank you.
Right. Clive?
Does having a business of this type, which is somebody who's there in the property, does this affect on council tax purposes? I mean, if it's a business there, does that change the issue there?
That wouldn't be an issue for us to consider.
So it is a query, but you're unable to answer it.
Yeah, it's recommend speaking to Council Tax Department on that.
John, have you got a question for Mr. Barzy, or is it just the general? Yeah. Yeah, okay. I just wanted to draw a line under that, that's all. Okay, any other questions for Mr. Barty? None? Okay. We'll go on then to questions from committee members as normal. Councillor John Thomas.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Under the consultation on page 40, we've just got two with no objections: planning, policy officer, and environmental health. Was highways notified at all, asking for their observations?
I would go based on the content of the report. That doesn't appear to be the case, given the small scale nature of it. We'll just check now to see if there was any that's not been reported. Yeah, looking at our records there, doesn't look like we've had any comments from highway engineers on that. No.
Yeah, that amazes me really, because just after I got elected some 7 years ago, we were having meetings upon meetings in the street, because I live just higher up where our car is, a couple of houses up, and they wanted to put chicanes all the way down that street because of the volume of traffic in and out, the congestion with the traffic for the school at Caimari Dun. So I'm very surprised that, you know, they haven't come up with any objections or whatever against this, to be honest. That's the one question. Where am I by? I got a couple, sorry, Chair, if that's okay. On the page 41, the fourth bullet point there is existing congestion and poor parking, which would be made worse by the proposed business and may restrict residents from parking near to their properties, which is particularly important for the elderly and those with mobility issues. Directly next door to this property, there's a couple there who are, I think they said 85 years of age. The husband has the start of dementia, and he's in and out all the time. Moves his car, drives around the block, comes back. And the residents living around there always keep his space open for when he got to help his wife out, because she's on sticks. So they help her out once or twice a day. You know, my concern is, if we got clients going into this property, if this is approved, and they park in their spot, it's going to be very, very difficult for them coming in and out, you know?
Yeah, that's not something we can really control from a planning point of view, because it appears to us that the street is not regulated in terms of residential permits or anything like that. Yeah. So as it stands, there's no designated spaces, so residents are effectively free to park where they can, I suppose. That's not to say that the person's visiting the property couldn't park further up the street and walk down to this property. There's, you know, I suppose if there is in terms of this property, as I understand, they've got a parking space to the rear, so that would suit the resident. So if you look at what you're saying there, you could have a visitor that parks in front of their property, I suppose, and that would in effect not affect any of the neighbours then, if that was to take place.
Because I've taken photos the last couple of days of the street. It looks clear now, but the photos I've got different times of the day, and it's chock-a-block both sides.
Yeah, I appreciate that, yeah.
On page 43, the third paragraph down, the proposal would not be of a scale that it would draw any meaningful trade away from local centres, nor would it significantly undermine the performance of existing businesses in the local area. Do you look at that as businesses in the town centre or businesses which are in the vicinity of that area?
So the policy is looking at businesses, town centre and local centres primarily, but obviously because it's a a retail, well, not a service provision, we would have to consider under the policy the effect it might have. But in this instance, it's a very small bedroom being utilised in a residential
I appreciate
property.
that. Yeah.
If it was the whole property, you could perhaps argue that it was a bigger use, but even then, you still get small little businesses that pop up in different areas, which of such a scale that it wouldn't have result in any significant diversion of trade. You wouldn't suddenly get lots of people going here instead of other places, where you would try to concentrate those retail uses.
Yeah. Because in the surrounding area there, within 3 minutes walk, we've got 2 of these beauticians, which are in, like, one is in the Old Mountain Ash pub and one is in an old hairdresser's. So, they are properly sited, properly used.
Yeah, it's the town centre and the local centres which the policy essentially seeks to protect. So, if you've got an out-of-town retail use, for instance, and it competes against another out-of-town retail use, that doesn't matter as much as the effect it has on those protected retail centres.
Okay. The next question is the proposed opening hours 9 till 5. Is that concrete close at 5 o'clock, or would they be allowed to work on if they had an extra client coming in or something like that?
Well, we've imposed a condition to limit it to those hours, and the use is only to operate in conjunction with the residential use as well.
Yeah, that's it, I think, Chair. Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Any further questions? Councillor Clive Jones.
So in the case of the hours, who would monitor that? And it's just not Monday to Friday, it's Saturday hours there as well, I think, in the morning until lunchtime. Who would be the council officers to monitor that?
We wouldn't monitor it as a matter of course, but if any potential breach of that condition was reported, we would investigate it through our enforcement process.
Okay.
Councillor Scott Thomas.
Thanks, Chair. To double down on the same question, is obviously some treatments might stretch over ever so slightly. I know obviously the operating hours are there. Obviously, if a client is booked in for a time slot close, let's say close to the 5 o'clock, and for some reason they go over, there's a leniency for that.
I think, again, if we received a complaint that they were operating not in accordance with the condition, then we'd look at that sort of detail as part of that investigation.
And my second question, then, are we aware of any residential properties, maybe not so much in the immediate area, but in a reasonable area around that property that have in the past or had any kind of alternate use to just residential? So it had a business use connected to it. And the only reason I'm asking is because you've got, and not so much an Airbnb in a sense, but I'm talking like, you've got people who are trained masseuses, you've got people who are trained things, who do things from their own properties.
Yeah, we run away of any in that area.
Just to add to that, it's not uncommon, obviously, for some people to have a small home business, or an office space that they, we all work in agile environments now, so we all have a little space that for work purposes. So, there may be things that go on and it's not reported to us, but if they are, then we investigate them and take action if need to.
That's fine. I just wanted clarity on if there was any sort of thing around that area, because I know there's a lot of pop-up sort of from home spaces now.
Yeah, sorry, that was the second question. So these businesses that run from home, are they registered, for example, with the Environmental Health Department, because under health and safety legislation, etc., they have to and have got the ability to inspect the places? I wouldn't have thought a residential property is exempt from that.
Again, I think sort of similar to the issue in terms of council tax and rates. Again, that's something for a different mechanism than planning to look at.
Any further questions? I go to comments. Councillor John Thomas.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. As mentioned, previously, Argyle Street is a very well sought after area, a very respected area as well, to be honest, by the residents and by people who visit there. I don't think it's a type of area to start being turned into running businesses from the properties. Looking at the traffic congestion we have at certain times of the day, it's not a bus route. Traffic is horrendous certain times of the day. And to their chair, I won't be going with the officer's recommendations for this application. Thank you.
So there's no further comments with that. Sorry, Councillor Scott Thomas just popped up.
Yeah, Chair, I was just waiting to see if anybody else had anything to say. Well, I for one, am all for encouraging entrepreneurship. And we all know how difficult it is to start and run a business in this day and age. So with that being said, Chair, I would more than happy support this and propose that we move the proposal.
Second it as well.
All right, so we've got a proposal and a seconder. So I'll put it to the vote. And that's been carried. We go to item number 7, which is an information report. Appeal received P/23/0175 and item 8, delegated report October 2024. As I say, those are information reports. On to item 10. Any other business? I haven't any. So thank you and good night.